The book of Ruth is a short but powerful narrative found in the Old Testament of the Bible. It tells the story of a Moabite woman named Ruth and her journey of faith, love, and redemption. The book is set during the time of the Judges in Israel, a period of upheaval and lawlessness. The story begins with a famine in the land of Bethlehem. Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, leave their home to seek refuge in the neighboring country of Moab. While there, their sons marry Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. However, tragedy strikes when Elimelech and his sons die, leaving Naomi as a widow with her two daughters-in-law. After living in Moab for about 10 years, Naomi hears that the famine in Bethlehem has ended and decides to return home. She encourages her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab and find new husbands, but Ruth insists on staying by Naomi's side. Ruth's loyalty to Naomi is evident as she famously declares, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Ruth 1:16. Upon their return to Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth are met with kind and gracious welcomes, particularly from Boaz, a wealthy landowner who is also a relative of Naomi's. Boaz allows Ruth to glean in his fields, which means she can gather leftover grain from the harvest. This is a provision made in the Mosaic law for the poor and widows. Naomi, who is now bitter and saddened by her losses, begins to see the hand of God in Ruth's gleaning in Boaz's fields. She recognizes that Boaz is a potential kinsman redeemer for Ruth, which means he has the right to marry her and provide for her and Naomi. Naomi instructs Ruth to go to the threshing floor, where Boaz is sleeping, and lay at his feet. Ruth follows Naomi's instructions, and Boaz, upon waking, is surprised to find Ruth at his feet. She asks him to fulfill his responsibility as kinsman redeemer, to which Boaz agrees. However, there is another relative who has the first right to be the kinsman redeemer. Boaz goes to the city gate, the place of legal transactions, and presents the matter to the elders and the other relative. In accordance with the law, the other relative declines his right, and Boaz is free to marry Ruth. Boaz redeems Ruth by marrying her, and she becomes the great-grandmother of King David, from whom Jesus Christ descends. This shows how God was working behind the scenes to fulfill his promise of a Messiah, even amidst the brokenness and struggles of the Israelite people. The book of Ruth is a beautiful love story, but it is also a story of faith, obedience, and redemption. Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi, despite her difficult circumstances, is a powerful example of loyalty and selflessness. Ruth's humble character and willingness to work hard in the fields also capture the essence of servanthood and the importance of labor in God's eyes. Her story is a reminder that God can use anyone, regardless of their background, for his divine purposes. Furthermore, the book of Ruth also highlights God's sovereignty and provision for his people. In a time of famine and death, God provides for Naomi and Ruth through Boaz, who acts as an instrument in God's plan. The book also serves as a contrast to the period of the Judges, where everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and there was widespread disobedience to God's law. In contrast, Ruth and Boaz's obedience to the law and devotion to each other stand out as examples for the people of Israel and for readers today to emulate. Another significant theme in the book of Ruth is the inclusion of outsiders into God's family. Ruth, a Moabite, could have been seen as an outsider in the community of Israel, yet she is welcomed and ultimately becomes part of the lineage of King David and Jesus. This message of inclusion and acceptance is especially relevant in today's society, where there is often division and discrimination against those who are different from us. The book of Ruth reminds readers that God's love knows no boundaries and that everyone is valued and welcomed into his family. In conclusion, the book of Ruth is a beautiful and inspiring story of faith, love, and redemption. It captures the essence of God's provision, sovereignty, and love for his people, and it serves as a reminder of the important values of loyalty, humility, and obedience to God's law. Ruth's story continues to impact readers today, encouraging them to trust in God's plan and follow his ways, even in the midst of difficult circumstances.